How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the Automotive channel, and in today's video I'm going to be doing an overview of my newly purchased C5 Corvette for the next big project on my channel. If you guys haven't seen what that project is, definitely go check out the other videos on my channel within the past few weeks here so you can get caught up on all of the crazy action that's to come. But in this video I'm going to be doing an overview of the car and giving it a thorough wash. So essentially what I want to do in this video is do an overview of the car and point out all of the little things and also big things that are not so easily visible on camera that can point towards, how the car was taken care of in its past. The car had 5 previous owners, so maybe from all the little things here and there we can maybe paint a picture of what type of person the previous owner might be and like how well they took care of it. Granted, there's only so much we can do. We're not gonna be able to like, oh yep, it's this type of person, yada yada yada, but at least it gives us an idea of how the car was taken care for based on all of the things that I can see on the car itself and also some of the documentation that I purchased, such as the Carfax with the car. The car is still pretty dirty, it's got mud on it from sitting in the auction yard for a while, and just dirt everywhere. I want to wash down the front bumper just to kind of see more exactly what type of damage we're working with as far as repairing that bumper and repairing the hood, and just clean the car up so that it looks a little nicer even in its present state. But first I got to move the car out of the garage onto the street so we can get a little bit better view at it. So my current plan for the overview in today's video is to kind of start in the front, work our way towards the back, and then go to the interior and look at all the little things that I've noticed that'll point towards, how the car is taken care of, what type of person the previous owner might be, and just all the little things. Like I'll be really nitpicking in this video just to kind of get a foundation of what we're working with here. But before I start looking at the actual car, I think I'm going to talk about kind of the logistics, or not logistics, I guess logistics of, the car itself, like when it was involved in an accident, the dates at the insurance auto auction and stuff like that. So the first thing I'm going to start with are actually the keys to the car themselves. So here are the keys to the car, just your standard Chevy key from the early 2000s with your fob separate to it, which the nice thing is the fob still works, the battery still works, it's still all synced up to the car. But the most interesting thing that'll start kind of this investigation on the car is really the tag that is associated with it. So this is a tag that, like for a shop or a dealership, so they can keep track of the car. On the back side of the tag it says tow in July 14th, 2018, and then it says to our shop July 16th, 2018. And then on the front it's got the car, the year, make, model, and then here it says total in red Sharpie, total, and then here you can't really read it that well, but it says released. So I'm guessing what this is this is the original, or this is the tag that was put on the keychain when the car was towed into the shop after this accident happened, which these dates on here actually line up pretty closely to what the Carfax says, because the Carfax says that this car was involved in an accident sometime in the middle of July, which would be just around this time. Now the Carfax doesn't exactly say what shop it was taken to get I'm guessing they did the damage estimate at this shop to see if it was worthy to fix the car or just total it out. So that happened in the middle of July, so that aligns up with the Carfax, and then of course total released, meaning that's why it ended up at the IAI auction up in Montana. So now that we looked at the keys and the kind of tiny bit of information on the keychain here, I'm going to go over to the window sticker from the insurance auction and look at some of the data that they wrote down on that sticker to kind of point to some more dates and evidence and whatnot. Alright, so what we got here is a window sticker that comes on every auction car, at least that goes through IAAI, and it has a bunch of information related to the lot and the vehicle when it gets checked into the yard. So at the very top you got your stock number or lot number. That kind of is just particular to this car. You know, when you buy the car, you use that to help pay for it and everything like that. Below that is the claim number through the insurance, and I've covered that up just for privacy purposes. And below here is the insurance company that I bought it from, so State Farm in this case. And that is one thing that I will talk about in another video where I talk about buying a car from an auction like this, is you want to always try and buy from an insurance company and not a third-party seller who's trying to maybe flip the car. You end up with a car with less conspicuous things that happen. So State Farm, then of course 2001 Corvette, lost type collision, obviously the front there. It was sold at the Missoula branch of IAAI, and that is a mouthful. Every time I say IAAI, I get like tongue twisted. Dispatch date was August 28th, 2018. I'm not exactly sure what dispatch means, but I'm thinking what that means is like that's the date when the insurance company called them and said, hey, we're going to bring this car to the auction, or maybe when a tow truck went to go get the car, something like that. Below that is a little bit more information particular to the vehicle itself in regards to its condition. So here we have keys, yes or no. It came with keys. The radio works, yes or no, yes. So this is another interesting date. It was checked in August 30th of 2018, so 2 days after the dispatch date, which is exactly about a month and a half after that date we saw on the keychain when it was brought to that body shop for the inspection. So there was about a month and a half that passed between when this car was brought into the shop and when it made it to the auction yard to get checked in. So that could have been just, working with the insurance company, deductibles, all the nitty-gritty stuff with what happens when you get in an accident. So the car, when I bought it, had 54,786 miles. That was the big reason why I really wanted this one, the super low miles. It is a run and drive car, and this is an interesting thing that I wasn't aware of. That is kind of one of those small things that, unless someone tells you, you're not going to find it on the auction site. There are different categories of run and drive, at least for IAAI. And a 600 is a run and drive, but it means it's an unsafe run and drive. And I called the auction yard, and they actually told me the reason why it was listed as an unsafe run and drive was because this fender right here was pushed in against the wheel, and so it was rubbing really badly. So that means that they only drove it, or they didn't even drive it, they just moved it forward and backwards, but they listed it as a 600, and then they put steering because obviously whenever you turn the front wheels, it's going to hit that inner fender there. And then the last thing on the sticker here is, was it imaged? And it was. So here we got it's a number associated with the auction, like the number in line on the auction block. And then this 1107 was the date of purchase, or the auction date for this car. So I did indeed purchase this car on November 7th. That was the date of the auction up in Missoula. The funny thing was I only noticed this car, so the August 7th, I keep saying August, November 7th was a Wednesday. I found this car on IAAI's site on Sunday, so only like 4 days before the auction, or 3 days before the auction started. So it was a very quick scramble to get registered and approved as a buyer to bid on these cars at IAAI. And exactly 1 week later, on November 14th, I took delivery of the car at my in-laws' house. So that was really cool. If you guys haven't seen that video, it's on my channel, so definitely go check that out. It's a pretty big moment for me, and of course for the channel as well. But the interesting thing is, so there's kind of two series of dates that are interesting here. There's about a month and a half gap of when the car was sometime involved in the accident or brought into the shop for the repair estimates, and when it got checked into the the IAAI yard on August 30th of this year. And then from August 30th to November 7th, it sat in that auction yard. So that's about 2 months, a little over 2 months that the car sat in the auction yard. So really a total of like 3.5 months. About 3.5 months where this car sat and just you know, got dirty, collected dust, wasn't running. So that's probably why it's so dirty and muddy and everything, with all the, you know, rain they probably had up there and the big trucks driving by. So it sat for a little while, definitely, but luckily that didn't seem to play into factor in regards to how it runs right now, because it runs pretty dang good. So now that we covered some of the logistics stuff around the auction, when it was in an accident, yada yada yada, let's go ahead and get to the condition of the car itself. So I'm going to start, as I said, in the front and talk about where the main impact happened and what, you know, kind of it damaged. So the main impact obviously happened in the front here on the driver's side. Luckily the impact kind of came right at an angle here, it looks like, and hit this horizontal crash bar, and the crash bar did its job by absorbing a lot of the impact along with this foam impact absorber, is literally what it's called, because it saved a lot of the components in the front here from further damage, such as, you know, in particular the main frame rails, because I think if the impact were to hit any farther to the right on the joint here where the frame rail welds up to the crash bar, we would have seen much more damage on that main frame rail. So the impact, and I also have the front bumper laying out over here, the impact again it looks like it came up and to the side based on the scrape lines, and it cracked this bumper pretty good. So it, you know, pushed some holes in here, scraped this, cracked all this tab's cracked, and then this crack actually goes all the way down and goes along this license plate cover, stops about here, and continues down all the way there. So we're gonna have a fun time trying to do the best I can to repair this polyurethane, I think it's polyurethane, but I'll check later, front bumper. And the only other thing was in the auction photos, this was zip tied on with these metal zip ties, so I didn't necessarily see this front crash bar damage. The only thing that I did kind of notice that pointed towards, okay, there might be some, you know, more extensive damage, was this little silver metal piece here that holds this trim piece on for the hood to kind of seal with, was bent. So that was the only thing on the auction photos that I could actually see that told me, okay, we might have a little bit more damage underneath that front bumper, which was probably just zip tied on after the body shop said, you know, or the owner decided not to go through with the repairs, so they just did it real quick. So again, the impact came kind of from, you know, this way up and hit the hood, so we crunched the hood pretty good here, all the way up here, and the whole headlight assembly, this is just zip tied on, which I did myself to keep it from falling, because it just is dangling by the wires at the moment. This whole flip up headlight assembly is all crunched and mangled from the accident, just a bunch of different plastic pieces. This whole hood is going to be a tricky repair. I've never done fiberglass before, but I think this will be a cool learning opportunity. If I mess up, it's not a big deal because this hood is kind of junked anyways, but I'm going to try my best to fix it, because ultimately I don't want to have to buy a new hood if in the long run I'm going to be ripping this thing apart and turning it into a go-kart. So a little bit more of the damage goes. The other things that are a little bit damaged are the inner fender here, which are fiberglass. I'll take this hood off here in a second so we can get a better view of the engine bay. But this little inner fender is damaged, it's cracked. It kind of deformed it and pushed it in, which is why it was rubbing on this front driver wheel here. And it's also cracked right here, which is where the brake ducts, air ducts mount in to plug in, which I have both of those. They're just sitting in the garage over there. Both of those are undamaged from the accident. So a little bit more damage here that I'll point to before moving on is this little front radiator support bracket. That's kind of bent in a little bit, you can see, compared to this one. So I've got a hydraulic bottle jack that eventually I think I'm going to try and push that out with. That'll be in a later video when I start disassembling the front end here and really getting into the repair. Other than that, the only other thing that's kind of wonky right now is this front scoop for the radiator. So this car is a bottom feeder. You can kind of see from the front bumper there's no main air inlet on the bumper here. So it actually pulls air underneath the car, which is what this scoop is, and cools the radiator that way. So this is currently kind of pushed in. You can see it better from this angle. So it's kind of pushed in because of this crash bar is pushing in like that. And I don't know if this air cleaner box is cracked, but I think it's open right now. But everything else is okay. All of the, you know, obviously the cooling system's fine because we can run and drive the car no problem. The air conditioning works just fine. It's very cold AC, so we know the AC condenser isn't busted either. And as far as the frame goes, it actually looks pretty dang good. It's got obviously 2 frame rails on either side, and the one's here and goes down along the length of the car, and then right around where the firewall is, it dives down and out, and then does the same thing in the back. And then of course you got this one on the other side. But based on the looks of it, from what I can see with still everything on the car here, and you know, I might uncover a few more things when I start disassembling the front end, but based on what I can see, both frame rails still look really straight. If anything, this one here, right where the accident or impact was, might be just tweaked slightly, kind of inward, based on, you know, when the impact hit here, it kind of wanted to pull this a little bit that way, but I still think that frame rail is pretty darn straight. And actually the other day, while I was at Disneyland on my phone, I bought a whole front section for this car. So I bought a new crash bar, and I bought the crash bar I bought actually comes with part of the frame still attached to it. So I think it comes with about 8 inches or so of frame still attached to the crash bar. So this side I probably won't touch, especially because the VIN number is stamped in on this frame rail. But this side, if it is bent and I want to replace it, I can cut it and then do all the necessary joints to weld that back on. And that's another reason why I went with the C5 and not with a C6 or C7. Well, C6 I would have been fine with, but the C5, C5 Z06, and C6 base all have steel frames. The C6 Z06 and up all have aluminum frames. And from anybody who's worked with metal knows that working with aluminum and cracked and re-welding it and bending it, it's a lot more difficult than steel. So that's why I wanted C5. You know, I got the base obviously for the target top, but the steel frame is going to be a lot easier to work with when it comes time to cutting that damaged one off and putting the new one on. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull the hood off, and then I'll go over the engine area with you guys and talk about some of the stuff underneath the hood. Alrighty, so with the hood off, we have uncovered the heart of the beast here. 5.7 liter pushrod LS1 V8 mated to the T56 6-speed manual transmission. And man, I'm really happy that I decided to go with a lower mile car, because I just feel so much better about the powertrain and knowing that it'll most likely be solid. Obviously, even low mile cars are susceptible to weird things sometimes, but you know, less likely to happen with a lower mile car. So with the hood off here, you can see a little bit more of the air cleaner itself. The box here for the air cleaner is really wedged up against this front scoop for the radiator, which is kind of why it's pushed up in this way a little bit. So once we cut this off and get some of those components out of there, it'll relieve some of that pressure, and I think we might be able to bend that scoop back into shape. Because another thing with this build is when I do get to the point of wanting to tear this thing down, I am going to try and sell a bunch of these parts to obviously get more money to put into the build for, you know, equipment and materials and things like that. But other than that, so moving on, other parts of the engine bay. Obviously when I got it, there was no oil in it because of that oil pan, which is now, I've turned it into a piece of wall art. So I kind of redid some of the stuff on the wall here, my Koenigsegg stuff, of course Eleanor. But I turned this old oil pan, which you can see the crack right there, that's where the oil was coming out of, and because there was no scrape line, I'm guessing it was just set down on some sort of rock or debris, and it just pushed up a little hole in this cast aluminum batwing pan, which I think also looks like Texas in my opinion. But anyways, so I fixed that, and now the car obviously is full of oil. Basically got a fresh oil change in the past few videos, got a new filter and everything on it, so that's good. Car still had plenty of coolant in it, and the coolant smelled good, nothing weird there. Power steering fluid, probably could add a little bit to that, and the brake fluid also looked pretty dang good as well. A lot of people will say look for debris in the brake fluid, because that could mean that some of the rubber parts in the master cylinder area could be degrading, but I didn't see any of that in there. Another thing that I also wanted to mention is, this is a shout out to Randy from Auto Auction Rebuilds. He always checks the oil caps when he's looking at cars out at Copart, and this cap looks really clean, no bad sludge or milkiness to it, so I think we're good there as far as moisture. And the oil, if you didn't watch my previous video where I did do the oil pan, the oil that was still, some of the oil that was still in the car looked pretty dang good. It did not look burnt or heavily used, as far as not being changed a long time. And that's another thing with this Carfax, was the oil was changed pretty frequently on this car. So someone definitely took care of the oil changes in a timely manner with this guy. And the oil that was in the car also, there was no metallic substances whatsoever in the oil. I ran a magnet through it and nothing was picked up from the magnet. So that was also a good sign, because I was a little worried with the car being, obviously having no oil in it from that crack in the oil pan, if someone tried to start it. But the auction yard told me that they didn't start it after they checked it in, and the tow truck driver didn't start it either. So I'm guessing in the 2.5 months it was sitting in the yard, when it was moved around a few times, that's probably when that happened, after they checked it in and checked if it ran and drive or not. So the other thing is, I actually didn't even check this washer fluid. Not a big deal. I can't tell if that's full or not, but not a biggie if it isn't. Everything else looks good. All the hoses seem to be in good shape. They don't seem hard or anything, or brittle. The belt was just recently changed. I can't remember, but it was on the Carfaxes. The belt was changed. And the other thing was, as far as maintenance goes, the battery, I said that it was the original battery when I first got it. It actually wasn't. It was, the date on it was from August of 2015, so it was a few years old, about 3 years old. So this is a new battery from O'Reilly's that I got in there, and that was the other thing. If you saw the video, when I started it up for the first time, I needed a new battery to get it to crank over. So moving on, the other thing is, I don't see any oil leaks, no wetness in the engine area. Obviously it's pretty dusty and dirty, which I'll get cleaned up here in a little while from sitting in that auction yard, but I don't see any wetness from leaks around the valve covers, no wetness below that, no wetness from the front here, from any of the plates that seal where the timing belt, or not timing belt, I guess you can call it the timing belt. I don't know, LS guys help me out here, but the chain that runs from the crank to the cam there. So no weirdness there, nothing on this side. I mean, it's, other than just being dusty and dirty, it's a really clean engine bay. And the only thing that will have to get replaced, that I mentioned in the past video, is that harmonic balancer is going bad on this car. So that is a known issue with the LS1, LS6, and I believe LS2s on the C6s, and maybe the LS3s, I'm not sure. But basically there's a rubber bushing in the middle of the harmonic balancer that starts to go bad over time, and you start to get a wobble. And if it gets bad enough, it'll start throwing the belt, which obviously will leave you stranded, and that's no good. So that will be a job in the future, which will be interesting, because to get to that bolt, to get the harmonic balancer off, you have to take the power steering rack off. At least you don't have to drop the cradle, so that is a plus. So other than that, so let's look at more of the ownership of this car. So the oil was changed frequently, belt was changed, the battery was replaced back in August of 2015. Other than that, mods. I do not see any mods as far as like the engine itself. The heads on this are 241 heads, that's the stamp or cast on it. No aftermarket headers, they're the stock manifolds. No aftermarket intake, it's the stock intake. Although because this is a 2001, we have the LS6 intake on this guy, so that is nice. Don't have to worry about doing that upgrade. No aftermarket parts as far as down below. It doesn't sound like it has a cam. It sounds pretty mild, stock, everything. So it's a pretty much stock engine setup. The only thing that isn't stock is this bridge, this air bridge that comes from the air cleaner here. So this is a Vortex power duct, and then it is mated with this breatheless performance products like rubber connector piece with these metal hose clamps. So to me, that kind of points towards the direction of like the person who owned this in the past, whoever installed it, was a car guy, probably wanted a little upgrade, but nothing too crazy. So kind of conservative, maybe a slightly older gentleman that just wanted to do a little upgrade here and there. So that could be a good thing, you know, just a little car guy here, or a little upgrade from a car guy to take care of the car and, you know, just add a little bit more performance to it. But everything else seems good. The alternator is in good health based on the voltage readings from when the car is on. I did replace this tensioner pulley because that's what I thought was causing that squeaky belt when I first got it running. So that was already replaced, and what I might do when I do the harmonic balancer at some point is just replace all of the other idler pulleys down there. Since I'm going to be down there, you know, might as well just kind of do some preventative maintenance as well. But other than that, really clean engine bay. Aside from it being dirty, I mean clean as in, you know, nothing majorly wrong from what I can see right now. So once we get this thing cleaned up, I think it'll look really nice here. Nothing leaking from underneath the valve cover, or whatever you call these, the valve cover covers, the plastic covers that say Corvette on them. So yeah, I was pretty happy to see that. Windshield wipers work and everything just fine. And then one thing I will note here before moving back is I'm not going to climb underneath the car right now because it's so low. I'd have to jack it up, but it looks really clean underneath the car as well. No scraping, no damage to the cradle or any other pieces, you know, from the accident. The only other scraping that I saw was on the control arms from when the forks probably picked this thing up at the auction yard to move it around, but it's just some light surface scraping. All really clean, no corrosion or anything, which is a concern of mine since this car was coming from Montana, but no corrosion at all under there. It all looks really clean, obviously dirty, but clean as far as, you know, major things that could be an issue. So moving back here, so we have our damage on the front bumper. That kind of led to some damage here on the fender. You can see a big scrape we got here. That is deep into the paint and possibly the fiberglass. The tabs here where this mounts into this inner fender, it actually ripped the bolts out of it, so you can kind of see that a little bit. So that's something that we'll have to figure out how to replace. Maybe do a little bit fiberglass in here because this inner fender is also fiberglass. So that comes up to here also, a little bit of a crack there too. Again, I'm not too worried about this stuff because in the long run, this car will get turned into a go-kart, but for the time being where I do want to drive it as a normal Corvette, you know, we'll fix it up a little bit. So unfortunately, it did pull those bolts out. We chipped off the inside part here, a little bit of a crack right here in the fender. Where else? There is some scuffing here from the accident as well, I think. Don't know exactly how that got there, maybe from when the bumper popped off and kind of just went up. But going back here, the fender looks pretty nice overall, aside from this, you know, little bit of damage up here. Other than that, the fender looks in good condition. The corner here is not damaged, although the accident did push the fender back a little bit, so it is overlapping the door. And if I pull the door back a little bit, let me refocus the camera. If I pull the door back a little bit, you can see that the door was rubbing on this fender because it was pushed back. So that's kind of interesting. So that's probably due to all the tabs being ripped and everything, and that's probably what caused that. So it's sitting a little bit this way here, and then the bottom is pulled out, so you can see that panel gap down there is a little bit big. Not a huge thing, just again being very nitpicky in this video. That's why I'm being very thorough with everything. So let's move on to the wheels here. So all four wheels have these General tires on them. That's literally the brand is General, and they'll all need to be replaced. They're dry rotted. The back ones are somewhat bald. These ones are okay, but they're all dry rotted, so they're going to need to get replaced in order to be safe while driving this thing. As far as the brakes go, the rotors seem like they're in good shape. There's no, you know, when I run my finger over the rotor, there's no weird kind of ridges or anything, and it doesn't, you know, feel funky. It kind of looks pretty good. The pads, at least the pads on the outside, I wasn't able to check the pads on the inside. The pads on the outside look pretty thick, like it was recently done here, and the brakes were done at a Honda dealership when this car was traded in a little while ago. I saw that on the Carfax. And the rear brakes also seem really good as well. So the car has the stock C5 5-spoke wheels on it, chrome, and the one thing that I noticed on this car that kind of points me to think that the previous owner or owners were car guys are the valve stem caps. So if you can see that, the valve stem caps are not just your standard black ones. They're actually nice metal ones that have the Corvette logo on the end of them. So to me, when you have someone that's going through the extent of putting nice valve stem caps on the car, it seems like they're probably a car person and into taking care of the car. Some people might disagree with me, but I put Mercedes valve stem caps that my friend got me on my car. So, you know, I'm a car guy, I take extra special care of that, so I'm just trying to relate that to this person. So if they went through the trouble of buying 4 nice valve stem caps with the Corvette logo on it, odds are they probably took good care of the car, they liked the car, they were a car person. So moving back here, let's kind of keep moving along the car. Nothing really too crazy on the bottom here, it's dirty, but the big thing here on the, there's a little scuff on the fender here, but I think that can get buffed out. Big thing here, the door and the fender, the rear quarter panel or fender, whatever you want to call it, has a nice scratch on it. I don't know how well that's coming across on camera, you can see it better there. And it continues from here along kind of right where the door handle is, and then goes down on the gas cap, and then down further, and then you got more down here. So my friends and I were talking about this, my buddy Zach, who was the one that helped me with the oil pan, we were talking about, you know, yeah, it could be from the accident, or it could be someone keyed the car. It doesn't really look like a key though. I mean, these do, for sure. But these parts down here, they're small ones as well. Again, I'm trying my best to capture this on camera for you guys. There's small scratches here, so, oh, and then it continues on the bumper here too. But, so I don't think that was a key mark. I honestly think this is from the accident, and when they, you know, whoever hit the car, hit it and maybe, you know, trailed and scratched it as they drove by it. But the only odd thing is I don't see any damage on the mirror here, which definitely would have probably seen some sort of impact if this was, you know, hit during the accident. So it's interesting. Could be a key mark, someone was angry at the person, maybe a crazy ex-girlfriend, or it happened during the accident. So that's kind of sums up the damage here on this side. There is a little bit of a chip here in the door. So I'm trying my best to focus it on you guys, but this little chip here, you can see, I don't know how well it comes across on camera, but you can definitely tell that this was chipped, I think, at a different time aside from the accident, because I can kind of see touch-up paint around the chip here. So again, this points to maybe, you know, a chip happened, so someone who took care of the car went through the extent of trying to touch it up. They didn't do a very good job. It obviously chipped off again, but definitely looks like there's some touch-up paint around this little nick here in the door. So I'm pointing towards, again, maybe someone who took a little extra special care with this car. So I'm going to swing around back here. Oh, another thing I want to point out. So the mirror itself, it just has a bunch of rock chips on it, it looks like. That's kind of like some debris from driving. Nothing crazy there. Hardly can see it on camera. But the only other thing was, just again, being nitpicky, I noticed this white stuff here on the inside of the mirror, and that is wax. That is most definitely wax. So someone, again, who had this car before, waxed it, you know, took care of it from at least what I can see, or tried to take care of it, because there is some residual wax underneath where because the mirror can fold out and in, so they obviously got some wax in there and it got stuck. So this car was waxed, so that was good to see. You know, again, pointing towards someone who might have taken a little bit better care of the car than your average run-of-the-mill person. The only other thing on this side is The window has a small chip in it here. It's not a crack, it is kind of just like a chip. So I might try and do some sort of sealant to prevent that from spreading in the future. This car does have the transparent, I don't know if it's Lexan or what material it is, but it has the transparent roof or semi-transparent target top. You can kind of see there. The clear coat on this is starting to kind of peel up, so that'll be something I'll fix, because this is a part that I'm going to keep on even when the car is built into a go-kart. So I'll do some clear coat repair or paint it black or whatever. I really don't care that it's the Lexan one. I could care less, because you can't see through it anyways. It does let a little bit extra light through, but it's not a big deal to me. So as I had the door open, it reminded me of another thing I wanted to point out. So the person who had this car before put these little strips on here. And if any of you know what these are strips to kind of help prevent door dings or damage to the edge of the door here, like if you're in a tight garage. So, and those are on both sides. So again, pointing towards someone who, you know, probably took care of the car, went through the process of installing these things on or having them from the dealership, and you know, making sure that they didn't damage the edge of the door here. Or maybe the door is damaged. I haven't taken these off yet, so maybe the door is damaged and they just want to cover it up. But at least, you know, those are on there, so, you know, I will pull those off because I don't really like them. Alright, so moving around to the back here, I know I said I was going to go front to back, but I'm going to kind of do a U here and then go to the inside. The rear end is pretty much flawless. I don't see anything wrong with it. The exhaust pipes, or the tips, might be a little bit bent down. That's the only thing I might have noticed. Obviously very muddy from sitting in the yard. The mud marks are going this way, so it seems like it's from a passing by car while it was parked. It doesn't seem like this was driven in the mud or anything. So the big thing here that some of you are probably throwing up at are these chrome pieces on the taillights, the rear, you know, brake light, and the side markers. Has all these chrome pieces on them, and in that third-party auction listing, if you guys watch my research video, the car also had a chrome cover around the license plate area and reverse light area. So chrome to me, as I said earlier in my other videos, chrome to me points towards an older person that owned this car. That seems to be more of their style. I, myself, as a young person, I'm more drawn towards the dark accents like black or gray. So to me, I wouldn't be doing this to my Corvette if that was me. Maybe there is some young person out there that likes chrome on their car, but I'd say 9 times out of 10, this points towards your typical midlife crisis type of Corvette owner that installed all these pieces on them. So I think that's kind of where these came from. They're actually pretty nice. They're metal. I already took one off just to see what I was working with underneath, but I'm going to take all of them off, and I'm going to take off that middle brake light and the sides as well. And there's even some awful, like, adhesive stuff that covers this Corvette thing that makes it all like sparkly and stuff. I don't know, it's not my style. So we have some sort of scrape mark that I don't know where this came from or how this got here. Maybe the car was pushed up against something when it was hit, and you can see the scuff kind of starts here and then goes up, really digs in here, and then continues up this way. So my guess is it happened probably during the accident and the car was maybe pushed up against a fence or something. And then this fender here finally is pretty undamaged. I don't see anything wrong with it. This was on the side where the accident didn't happen, so this fender looks pretty immaculate. And this headlight setup also is works fine as well. Headlight pops up and goes down, turns on just fine. That headlight also turns on fine as well, so the bulbs and everything are good. It's just the all the bracketry is shot here, and unfortunately all the screw holes that the headlight assembly you know, mounts with are broken. So I'll have to figure that out in the future. One thing I actually thought of in the back here, the only thing I noticed, I don't know how well I can get it on camera. I'm gonna do my best, but the car is very low. On this muffler, on the passenger side muffler, there's a little bit of corrosion. I think that's corrosion. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a little bit of early rust. So that is literally the only spot of like bad corrosion on this car. Everything else, rear subframe, all the bolts for the suspension and control arms, the cradles, all of it looks really clean under here. Again, dirty, but clean as far as no corrosion. And also I wanted to point out that both fog lights, this one here, unbent, undamaged, works. This one on this side where the impact was bent up, but it actually still works just fine. It flashes when I beep the car and it turns on when the headlights turn on. And this little pump here, which I found out from a Corvette garage, this is like an emissions pump for air or a vacuum pump, something like that. That is undamaged as well. So luckily the damage didn't go too far back when the accident happened. But before I move on to the interior, I want to kind of just point out, or actually kind of leads into the interior, point out the fact that I think this car was actually hit while it was parked. I don't think this was an accident where the driver was at fault. I think this car was hit while it was parked. Main reason is neither airbag deployed. So both airbags are good. No airbag light on the dash. Both airbags are A-okay. And it's really interesting to me, and I'm pretty sure that's the case, because on this car, the airbag sensor is actually on the back side of the crash bar here, right where the impact happened pretty much. So obviously if the car's off, to prevent having to replace the airbag and the module and the seat belts, it's not going to deploy the airbags because it knows probably no one's in there. So I really think this car was hit while it was parked, or, you know, or I think the airbags also don't go off if you're going under a certain speed. So maybe it was a low speed accident or someone hit them at a stoplight. I don't know. It could be a various amount of things, but I really think this car was parked. Someone came in this side, hit it, and then, I don't know, went along the side here and scraped it a little bit. But yeah, it was really nice to see that the airbags weren't deployed on this one, because the other Corvette that I was looking at in Fresno, both of them were deployed. So I would have had to go in and replace the airbags, the module, and probably the seat belts as well, because those little explosives probably popped and locked up the belts. But on this car, we will not have to replace the airbags or the seat belts because obviously they didn't go off. So that is a nice thing. It is a plus because that's going to save us time and money. So thank you guys for bearing with me this far. If you're still here watching this video, thank you so much for watching. But now let's go ahead and jump into the interior. Again, I'm just being as nitpicky as possible, trying to uncover any little facts that could point towards how the car was taken care of and with its past owners. So from what you guys have probably already seen here, the interior is quite striking with all of its red components everywhere. So I'm pretty sure all of these parts with the red on here are aftermarket. One of the previous owners added those in. I don't think you can buy all of these red pieces stock from Chevrolet. So at first I was kind of I'm still a little about the doors and the parts on the doors, just partially because this is a little faded and this is worn down. But I think overall the red interior, especially the seats and the center console and whatnot, I'm warming up to. I think it's a nice tie-in to the outside color as well. But again, I think someone, you know, spent the time and money to had these reupholstered, because like I said in my past videos, I'm pretty sure you couldn't get this as an option from the dealership directly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure these are aftermarket upholstered seats, which they're pretty nice as far as, you know, the look. So as far as the interior goes, as far as condition, I'll just start on the driver's side since we're already over here. Passenger footwell is pretty dirty, but it's to be expected with a car that was sitting at a muddy auction yard. There's rocks and dirt and everywhere. You know, you can tell people's shoes were dirty getting in and out of this based on the scuffs here. Some mud here, a little bit of mud up on the top part of the door panel, but nothing a little bit of vacuuming and some wet wipes can't take care of. So on this side, the carpet still looks really nice though. Carpet looks in great shape, especially on the carpet that's on the trans tunnel there. No aftermarket pedals or anything, that's all stock. The steering wheel, again, has this aftermarket kind of like leather wrap on it, or not wrap, but you know what I mean, it was stitched on to the stock steering wheel. Going back to the seats here, seats are, passenger seat is much better. This seat is in rough shape. It's got a little bit of gook and, you know, grime on the seat here. The biggest part on this seat is the side bolster here. It's got your typical jean pocket, jean rivet, or whatever you call it, tear from getting in and out. And this car is so low to the ground, anybody who's not somewhat agile is just going to kind of plop in, and, you know, over time you'll start tearing into this. And then the side bolster down here where your thigh is, that is all just squished. So either this person who had this before or the previous owners, plural, were, you know, older, weren't as agile and just kind of plopped into this thing, or a little bit more heavy set per se, and, you know, their thighs extended over here and kind of just squished this down. You can see that the bracket here kind of is separated from the seat because it's squished down, and then just your typical leather creasing and everything from over time. But overall, it's not too bad. All the power things still work. If you do slide the seat rail, or slide the seat all the way back, it kind of pops off the rail, so I kind of just keep it in one position. I turn the feature off, that it's like the easy in and out feature, where the seat automatically goes back when you take the key out of the ignition, because every time it would do that, the seat would pop off the rail for a second, so then you'd have to kind of like lift it up and help it go forward. So the seat stays in one place, it's fine, it's not going to move. Moving on, so let's go ahead and get in the car. Heads-up display works great, super bright, very accurate too, nothing weird or funky with that. Radio works fine. It's got the Bose radio. Some people love it, some people hate it. Nothing crazy in here. You know, no signs of like cigarette use. Cup holder's fine. Here's an issue that's gonna have to get fixed. I'd have seen in my past video, this shift knob is like, one, it's a crappy aftermarket shift knob from like AutoZone, but it also just spins in place, and that is because the threads are all boogered up on this shift knob here. Someone tried to put duct tape on it and get it to just sit over this. This doesn't even have threads in it, so I don't even know why or what the deal is with that. So I'm gonna probably try and, if before going to like an aftermarket shifter, because I do want to get like an MGW shifter, because I've heard those are really great. Before I do that, I might try and just re-tap this, or die it. I use a die or tap and die set to get the threads back in shape, and just try something like that before completely replacing the unit. So again, you can see my aftermath from my fire extinguisher incident. All the fire extinguisher dust just everywhere in here, so that will be cleaned up with a wet wipe here in a second. If you're a seasoned Corvette guy, you'll see here that we have the adjustable toggle switch for our suspension system that'll adjust the ride. This is the F45 dynamic suspension option, which came on this car. I've heard of a few people saying this thing, it's hard to tell a difference between the 3 different modes. Not a big deal. We're gonna get a whole new aftermarket suspension setup in the future anyways. But the cool thing is little quirk and feature, which I'll do a whole video on separately on C5 Corvettes. You hold the active handling button down, and for a while it'll actually engage performance driving mode. You'll see it come up on the dash. But this center console here, I'm pretty sure this is a piece from a company called West Coast Corvette up in Anaheim. They make these center consoles with this stitching, the Corvette emblem. It's a little bit faded, and you can see, you know, from use where your elbow's resting on it, it's a little creased, but overall it's, you know, really nice center console. Definitely, I'm sure, nicer than the stock one. And then this red piping here is an aftermarket add-on as well. Let's go ahead and look in the center console, which it keeps running into the seat, but there's nothing in here. I thought I might find something, but I actually found out that your fuel door cap button is right there, so that's how you pop your fuel door. And we have a 12-volt like power adapter, so if we wanted to charge a phone or something in the future, we could do that. So other than that, on this side, I mean, oh yep, here's my, again, dusty aftermath from my stupid fire extinguisher incident. Don't hate me. I was an idiot, yes, I know. So that'll get cleaned up. Nothing else, you know, to talk about really on this side. So let's go ahead and hop over to the passenger side. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop into the passenger side here. The seat is in much better shape than the driver's side, obviously probably because, you know, this side isn't used nearly as much as the driver's side, but so the seat is in much better shape. There's a little beginning of it, one of those jean pocket rips there, very small though. And then the side bolstering on this side for your thighs and your ribs or whatever is in much better shape here. Just a little bit of leather creasing, but that's pretty typical of leather car seats from a car that's 17 years old. Pretty much all GM cars do that. So the seat is in much better shape. All the stitching and everything, the leather is in great shape on this side. Another thing that I didn't notice until recently, on these seats you actually have adjustable side bolsters so that it can squeeze you more firmly, you know, if you're doing some spirited driving. So I don't know if that's a special feature by itself, because I know these are called the sport seats because they have the hole here if you want to put harnesses through them. So these are an option, I believe, the sport seats, so maybe that's part of it with these. But as far as the passenger side goes, the carpet is very clean. That was one thing I noticed on the auction photos, was this carpet looked really nice and clean, nothing too crazy as far as dirt goes. And then another interesting thing that points towards the previous owner that I wanted to point out was something I found in the glove box. So the previous owner kept the original owner's manual inside a Ziploc bag. And then he had some sort of post-it note for changing the oil or something with that. But to me, I mean, tell me if you think otherwise, but to me, someone who keeps the original owner's manual in a Ziploc bag in the glove compartment, you know, it kind of points towards someone who probably took good care of the car. So that's nice. I don't have to worry about buying a owner's manual for the car. So I got one. This is the original 2001 Corvette owner's manual for the car. So that was kind of interesting that I saw that, and that kind of led me to believe that, yet again, probably a car guy owned this, not just your average Joe. And then here is all our RPO codes for the car in here as well, which I went over in my past video when I was investigating this car before buying it. So the only other thing that I want to show you guys as far as the overview and investigation goes is what's in the rear trunk here, because I found it quite interesting. Oh, and another thing, this spoiler here is an aftermarket add-on as well that did not come stock. So let's go ahead and pop the rear hatch, this little button here. So upon lifting this up, you'll see that the original tonneau cover is still attached to the car. It's in pretty good shape, nothing, no tears or anything. But another interesting quirk that pointed towards the fact that this someone, you know, kind of babied this car maybe, is the passenger side floor mat is still in the original wrapper from when the car was new. I don't think this thing was ever used. There's the driver floor mat, obviously used, but it's just kind of funny that no one ever opened this to use it for the car. The only other things that are back here are, so this is part of the headlight cover, the flip-up headlight covers. It didn't come with either of them, but that's part of one of them. I think that was the cracked, that's obviously the damaged one from the side where the accident was. And then here, this is just a Ziploc bag of all the bolts that hold the front bumper on, I think. Some more like front headlight pieces. Oh, this is the old tensioner pulley that I swapped out. So the other interesting thing was I was digging through the rear storage compartments here. So the car's got 3 storage compartments, 2 small ones and then 1 big one. I found this. So this is glass cleaner. It's empty though. So clearly someone took the time to keep, you know, car care products in the car, keep the car looking nice and clean. So again, pointing towards the previous owner was someone who babied this car and or took better care of it than just your average Joe. But other than that, I mean, nothing crazy elsewhere inside. I took out all the other covers here for these storage compartments. Just as your 6 discs or 12 disc, sorry, 12 disc CD changer back here, which is again another option. Unfortunately, they took all their CDs or the cassette or whatever that goes in here. So I don't have any CDs. I was hoping maybe I could figure out what type of music the previous owner listened to. But other than those few things back here, there's really not much else to talk about. I mean, that's a pretty in-depth overview of the condition of this car. The carpet back here is all nice and a little dirty, but you know, nothing too crazy. The whole rear hatch is in good quality shape, so then don't have to worry about replacing pretty much anything in this back area. So I think that's going to do it for this overview. I'm going to stop talking because I know I was rambling on a lot, but like I said, I was trying to just be as nitpicky and in-depth as possible to show you guys every aspect of this car and kind of its current state, and like I said, who that previous owner or owners were, you know. But it seems like they were car people and they, for the most part, took care of the car. So let's go ahead and give this thing a solid wash down because it is in desperate need of it. It still has all that Montana mud on it. And we'll be able to reveal some more of the quality of the paint and also just have it look nicer, especially that engine bay with that LS1, you know, want that looking nice. Oh, one thing I'm going to note here on the hood that I wasn't able to show on the top side is the only bummer on this hood here is it's pretty, like I said before, it's got some pretty solid damage. The whole part that mounts to the bracket, which is this side, is that would be the passenger side. So the driver's side part that mounts to the bracket where this hood, you know, hinges from, is completely sheared off. So you can see here, this is like the top layer of fiberglass. I think this is a two-piece hood, so you can see it's delaminating here, and that continues like a good chunk all the way up the length of the hood. So this is going to need some serious repairs, but hey, if it's a good learning experience, I'm not afraid to mess it up because, you know, if I don't try and repair it, I'm just going to junk it anyways. So might as well try and learn something and repair it at the same time. One thing I also wanted to note before I start washing this thing is, it's really funny, is every C5 Corvette that I've ever sat in, and even some of the C6s, on the inside, they all smell the same. I don't know what kind of smell it is. It's like an old kind of leather smell, but it's really interesting. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just, I thought I'd note that. It just smells like your typical C5 Corvette from the early 2000s. Everyone, so here is the final product, at least on the outside. I haven't done the inside yet, but the car cleaned up so nicely, especially the engine bay. So much better after a good thorough wash down. Finally got all the sticker and the writing off the windshield. That was a pain in the butt. The sticker like broke into a million pieces as I peeled it, but the paint, I mean, I tell you, the paint definitely shows how it's a low mile, well taken care of C5. I mean, the paint is just really clean. I mean, and I can still feel it's got a pretty fresh layer of wax on it too. Obviously it has its spots, like with the scratches and the nick in the door and a few pieces or spots here and there, but I tell you, this car cleaned up very nicely, especially the rear bumper without all the mud on it now. I'll have to polish those exhaust tips at some point, but I'm very happy with the final product with the outside. Now, I don't know if I'll do it today, but at some point here, now that the car's clean, I will go over it with a waxer, my power waxer, to kind of just clean it up even more. I might even clay bar it, but just going overkill just to clean it up as best I can. Might have to throw some tire shine on that, on the tires, but I am going to get new ones soon, hopefully. So the next step is to do the interior, because that needs a thorough cleaning as well. But just want to update you guys on the progress with the outside, because it turned out really nice. Alrighty everyone, so got the car pulled back in the garage here and pretty much almost done. There are a few things I didn't do today. I was going to clean the window glass a little bit more in depth, but I'll get to that another day. I did get to the interior, so again, engine bay is all clean, outside is looking good. Even the front bumper cleaned up pretty nicely aside from the damaged area here, but got vacuumed up the inside. Put some leather conditioner on the seats just to do anything I can to help the seats. Wipe down the dashboard and everything from all the fire extinguisher dust. So it's looking mighty good, if I must say. Swing around to the passenger side real quick. So I actually unwrapped the passenger floor mat, so that's a brand new floor mat, believe it or not. And I put that in, vacuumed, conditioned this seat. So nice thing about this car is the interior is so small, it doesn't take very long to detail the inside. So it turned out pretty nicely. Oh, and another thing is I took all the chrome taillight covers off, and I think it looks a million times better. So those are pretty easy to pop off, so just with 2 screws on each taillight. And it allowed me to clean out the inside of the taillight bezels here, because a lot of dirt collects up behind the taillight here on the bottom. So the next step will be trying to remove those other chrome pieces, but those are on with adhesive, so it might be a little bit more tricky. Well, that's gonna do it, guys, for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this and kind of watching me walk through the whole car and kind of nitpicking every little thing to point out, the car's history and the past ownership and stuff like that, and how the car is taken care of. So thank you so much if you made it to the end of the video here and stuck with me. I know my videos can kind of get long sometimes, but I just am trying to be as thorough as possible. And in future videos, I'll shorten them up a little bit once the car kind of, we get accustomed with it and everything else like that. So thanks again, guys, for watching. If you haven't already, definitely hit that subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up, because that really helps the channel here. And if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below and I'll be happy to answer them. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one.